Hi guys, I'm back and today we're going to talk about some more land and water forms. So let's begin with the peninsula. And you are looking at a satellite image of the Korean peninsula. This is the land mass that includes North and South Korea. And a peninsula is a piece of land that is almost entirely surrounded by water, but which is connected to a larger piece of land on one side. So you can clearly see that here we have water surrounding this land, and we just have one spot where it is connected to the mainland of Asia. In this presentation, we're going to talk about a lot of different types of landforms that are really all types of peninsulas. A cape is a type of peninsula. A promontory is another type of peninsula, which we're going to talk about. But a peninsula is really any piece of land. Here we have a familiar one. This is Florida, that is surrounded on three sides by water and just connected on one side to the larger piece of land. And peninsulas can be enormous, like the ones you're looking at here, or they can be a lot smaller. Here's a little bit of a smaller one. This is in Door County, Wisconsin. They can be small enough to just house a single home or a lighthouse. We see those throughout the fjords in Norway sometimes. Here's another really familiar peninsula. This is, I bet you guys know what this one is, without me even labeling it. Because yeah, this is the one that looks like a boot, and that is Italy. That's a very famous peninsula. So again, a peninsula is a large, wide area of land stretching into the sea, joined on one side to a continent. And the Latin roots of the word peninsula are the word pene, meaning almost, and insula, meaning island. So I like to think of the peninsula as being an almost island. If it weren't for just this one little spot here, we would have an island. Now we're going to talk about a type of peninsula called a cape. So a cape sometimes is referred to as a small peninsula. They tend to be higher pieces of land that narrowly extend into a body of water. So they usually make a good place for a dock or a pier, because as this piece juts out into the water, we have a more protected area of land here. Now I say protected, even though we are looking at a picture of Cape Horn, which is at the very southernmost tip of Chile, and part of a group of islands there that form basically the southernmost land that is not part of Antarctica. So this is a very harsh and really treacherous place to be. So when I say protected, it's all relative, right? The wind and the cold is very, very harsh here. So that's a place where you would be searching for some protection if you were there. Capes can be formed much in the same way as any sort of mountain. They can be formed by volcanoes. They can be formed by ocean currents and by changes in sea level. So they can also be created by glaciers. And here I have Cape Cod, that's in Massachusetts. And that was formed by the terminal moraine of a glacier, meaning the glacier traveled, and as it traveled, it pushed rocks and other material with it. And then when toward the end of the ice age, when the glacier stopped moving, all of that material was left here. That's what's called a terminal moraine. And so that's the Cape Cod, as lovely as it is, was formed on the earth and other debris that the glacier just pushed forward as it carved its way across the landscape. And the glacier melted, forming the bay that you see here. Here we have the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa. And that was created as powerful waves slowly eroded away this coastal rock. And the Table Mountain range that this is part of is largely made of sandstone, which is pretty soft. And so the ocean here eroded away the sandstone and left behind whatever harder rock was there. So we have a hard rocky cape here because most of the sandstone got washed away. And then up here we have Land's End in Cornwall, England. Beautiful, beautiful cape. I don't have much more information about that one. Okay, let's talk about an isthmus. So an isthmus is not a peninsula because it is connected on two sides, a narrow strip of land that is connected on two sides. So this one happens to be in Costa Rica. Looks absolutely beautiful. So isthmuses have really provided very important locations for trade routes. We have here, and now this is a map, this is not a photograph. We have here the Isthmus of Panama that connects North America and South America. And these places make natural sites for ports and canals, but obviously you cannot travel via ship unless you create a canal. And that's exactly what has been done here in Panama. The Panama Canal was built in, I'm going to say 1914, I believe. And since then, boats have been able to travel through across this isthmus. But prior to that, they would have had to go all the way around the long way. So isthmuses provide key sites for communication and cultural exchange, because you can imagine back then when everyone was traveling by ship, the ships coming this way would dock. They might have been coming from Asia, coming this way, and then there might have been some ships coming from Europe, maybe this way, and they would meet here. So the isthmus here also divides the Atlantic Ocean from the Pacific Ocean. The canals really revolutionized shipping and travel and allowed for faster and more efficient transportation of goods. Now, the thing about living on an isthmus, like you see here in the Bay of Plenty in New Zealand, people might choose to live there for all the same reasons that an isthmus is important. An important dock, an important location for trade, might make it a great place to live. However, you have to be concerned about weather, because if there is a hurricane or a storm, you've got to be able to, everybody's got to be able to get to the land on either side. So this can be a kind of crazy place to live in the middle of a storm. Okay, so an isthmus, just to refresh, is a stretch of land joining two large areas of land. And here we have one in Greece, the Isthmus of Corinth in Greece. Okay, let's talk about a promontory. Now, a promontory is a raised mass of land that projects into a lowland or body of water. You might be asking, how is this different than a peninsula? It is a type of peninsula. I think the difference is a promontory is generally much higher. It is characterized by a very large, tall outcropping of rock. And the other thing is a promontory can also extend into a lowland. So a peninsula has to be surrounded by water, but there are promontories that extend into the water, and there are promontories that also extend over a lowland area. So you might see that sometimes. This particular promontory is located near Calabria, Italy, and it was supposedly founded by Hercules himself. I cannot verify that, At the top of this promontory, you see a building that is a monastery, which is a type of church. And it has been there since the 4th century, and it has survived a couple of earthquakes and been rebuilt a few times in that time period. Okay, here we have the Cape of Good Hope. We've looked at that again earlier. We looked at that with the peninsula, or no, or excuse me, with the Cape. Okay, so remember, I said that we would be seeing some of these same images again because the fact is capes are peninsulas and they can also be promontories. So here we have a good example. The Cape of Good Hope, which we looked at earlier, is all of those. It is a peninsula, it is a cape, and it is a promontory because it's so high. So here we have the rumps in Cornwall, England, and you are not going to be able to see it very well. I could not get a great photo of this that included the landmass as well as the fort, but there is a tiny ruin of a fort on top of this rump in Cornwall, England. And so again, they make great sites for you to put your fort and your castle because they're easily defended. And so I believe in England and Ireland and Scotland, you see lots of examples of forts on top of promontories like this. And then here we have Wilson's Promontory in Australia, and you can see here they've placed a lighthouse on top of this particular promontory. Nope. Okay. There we go. And lastly, we're going to talk about the spit. This is a fun one. I wonder why they call it a spit. You see how the land honestly looks like a tongue sticking out, or like the continent over here has just said, just spit the land out. So a spit is simply an extended stretch of beach material that projects out into the sea and is joined to the mainland at one end. You could call it a peninsula, but it's really much smaller than a peninsula, and it's usually very narrow. And a spit is created by deposition. And what that means is waves push the sediment along the coastline. It's called longshore drift. When the waves come in this way and they push the debris and the sediment, and as it pushes, it deposits that material and gradually builds up this long, thin tongue of land jutting out into the sea. This one is in Croatia. And then we have, here we have Homer Spit in Alaska. And what you're going to notice about these is that each of these examples has a very definite bend. This one is called Spurn Point. This is another one in England. They have a definite hook shape. And this is because over time, the wind will change direction. So for a long time, the waves coming this way were pushing the material this way. But then the wind kind of changed direction and started going this way. And so then you started to get a hook shape to your spit. And here's another one in Cadiz, Spain, where the same thing has happened. This one must have been there a long time because they felt comfortable building on this one. Because this is created from deposition, it has to, it takes a long time to have enough material deposited there that it becomes a stable piece of land. So there, I don't have a picture of it, but I was in Minnesota. I was in Duluth last summer, and there is a spit there called Minnesota Point. It's actually two spits that come out. One comes from Duluth and one comes from Superior, and they almost meet in the middle, not quite. So we have Minnesota Point and Wisconsin Point, and people live out there, which always amazes me because in the middle of winter in Duluth, that living out on a spit seems like Very brave thing to do. Okay, well, that does it for us with our land and water forms too. So let's talk about how you might continue your study of land and water forms. Um, I have some outlines for you, and so you can print them and color them and make a book about the land and water forms. You could use those to make a poster. You don't have to use my outlines. You can draw your own anytime. But what if you made a poster and then gave a lesson to your family? If you have an atlas at your house, you could browse through the atlas and see how many of these different landforms can you find. Do any of them appear in our area? I'll give you a hint. Yes, they do. So I would love for you to research that and find out, where are they? Can I visit them? You could go outside with permission. Go outside, get some sand, get some mud, get some water, get some little containers, and make your own spit, make your own promontory. I have also included some links here to the video lesson that I made last week about how to make land and water forms in salt dough. It provides the salt dough recipe, the instructions, and you get to see me make some landforms. You could also check out this link to National Geographic, where it gives you more information about landforms, or there's a second link to National Geographic that just describes Earth habitats in general. So I hope you enjoyed talking with me about more landforms, and I do have some more planned, so I will be back. Enjoy, and don't forget, if you do make a project out of this, I would love to see the pictures. Okay, thanks guys. See you later.